Okay, so despite the fact that I don't do well with videos on RPGs, usually when I talk about role playing, I don't get the huge views or whatever. But I was asked a bit about the Ninepoint tabletop RPG that I made. And I made this a while back to start a Ninepoint campaign with viewers and patrons specifically. I did that a while back, and I have it linked down below the guide that I wrote for players if you're interested in looking at that. But yeah, I got some questions about it because I mentioned it offhandedly and about how I made it. Now, I am far from an expert on making these things, and I didn't really get to play test. I think playtesting is where you would find a lot of things. When we were playing it, I found like the movement needed some work, but other than that, I didn't do extensive amounts of playtesting on this. It's just like a little thing. And I made it because I didn't really like any of like the prefab, like I didn't want to homebrew anything off of a pre-existing system. I wanted to make something of my own. And I mainly wanted to do that because Ninepoint already has a very gamifiable structure, especially when it comes to the combat and how the different like types of magic work within Ninepoint. I worked on creating a very balanced system of magic for Ninepoint, which is my comic. I probably should mention. Yeah, when I was developing the magic system, I made it very balanced. I didn't want it to be super magical in its presentation. So basically the way that magic works in Ninepoint is that all cats have 9 souls, and then pointed cats, which are cats that have like the Siamese kind of pattern, they are able to use special skills relating to souls. And when magic plays out within the world of cats, like you don't actually see it as magic. It's kind of like supposed to work like 9 lives, where like you were supposed to die in this instant, but your soul is lost instead. And because there's like the 9 soul dynamic and there is a way to regain souls, I think it works well for like an RPG. Another thing that I kind of wanted in like an RPG that I was playing with Ninepoint was like, I didn't want characters to level up because I wanted a more kind of realistic thing where I guess like there might be like leveling of skills. I don't know if we ever talked about that. I guess, okay, sorry, I went off the rails, but like the basis for this is that you are a knight, and in Ninepoint the knights are like highly trained people, kittens, highly trained cats. They've been training all of their lives, and by the time you're a knight, you're fully leveled up, right? And then it's all downhill from there was kind of what I wanted to work with. I didn't really want to work in a system where you're leveling up. It's more a system where like you don't want to take damage and receive like negatives to your like you don't want to like get injured in a way that will leave you with a permanent effect. So like I created a bunch of like permanent effects that can happen if you lose a soul within the game context. If you lose a soul and like it's pretty bad, like the situation was like a near death situation, like you roll and you will see what kind of negative effect that you gain from that, I believe is how the system works. I probably should have reread the entire thing before chit-chatting away here, but that's life. But that was my philosophy, and that's why I had difficulty finding like a basis for like what I wanted to do. Like that's why I didn't want to go with like D&D or like GURPS or like Pathfinder or whatever. I wanted something that had this idea that your characters just get worse with time rather than them like leveling up and getting better, because it doesn't make sense in the Ninepoint world, because the Ninepoint world is more like our world where like working your body really hard is going to like wear down on it over time, and getting into a battle and nearly dying isn't going to leave you stronger, it's going to leave you worse for wear. And a lot of like the battles in Ninepoint aren't going to be battles with like huge beasts or anything. They're just going to be like regular other knights, I guess, or like like different animals, because there's different animals in Ninepoint. I didn't really sit down and figure out like how someone would play as a different animal, because like I just kept it small and very focused when I was working on it. There was like a few different like stats like I worked out, and like different roles I wanted to do, but I didn't want to make it like overly complicated, I guess. I also set it in an earlier time in the timeline because like I just didn't want to have to deal with like the current Ninepoint plot, because like it's just so overarching and big, and like if things change I feel weird about it. So like when I made it, I set it in like a different section of the timeline. And another reason for that is within the context of Ninepoint, there's like an era of like the calico hunt where the knights would actually hunt down the calicos and fight them, but now like within like modern Ninepoint, most of like the calicos are like just children and stuff, and like fighting children isn't fun. I guess. I mean, it is kind of weird to play a Ninepoint RPG because like the cats are so bad. They're not great people. You can construct a story where the cats are good people, I guess, but that's not really the case with Ninepoint, so it is a bit odd. That's just something odd about Ninepoint in general. I think about like making like RPGs and board games and stuff all the time with like Ninepoint, especially like just Ninepoint lends to it very well, but I think about it with like all sorts of stories that I create. I find that a lot of the things I make do lend well to that sort of thing, especially when it comes to creating RPs that me and Ursula enjoy and like to RP with. Like, I feel like I'm good at structuring something to get what I want out of it. I feel like you have to kind of approach things with like some sort of design philosophy that you want. Like that's how it was with Ninepoint, where it was like I was making it because I didn't like what I had on offer for RPGs for telling like a story within Ninepoint, and I just thought it would be like cool to work with like the constraints of the Ninepoint soul system. Like, I just thought that was neat, and it was cool to build off of that. But, like, I don't know, if I was doing a more generic fantasy, or a more, not generic, but a more typical fantasy, I think you could homebrew it a lot easier. But I also don't do tons of RPGs, I'll be real. I don't, like I've talked about, like, I don't do tabletop RPGs all that often. I think they were just good for having, like, a whole bunch of people, like, RP rather than just me and Ursula. Like, I think it was good to have some sort of rules and give people options to play, and I think that was helpful. And I also around the time that I was doing that, I also had like a Discord RPG that I was doing, and that was really fun, where there was a section on the Discord and there was like multiple choices. It was like it wasn't an RPG. It was more like, well, I guess it was an RPG. The binds of RPG. It wasn't like a tabletop RPG, but like on our Discord, there was like a little section where you would vote out of like the 3 options. It was like a choose your own adventure, and we also had like there is like an archaic system on our Discord that still exists. It's like a money system based on how you chat or whatever. So like if you wanted to use an item, you'd have to actually have that item. What I would do is I would write the prompt, and then I would write the options, and then everyone would react with a emoji, and whichever got the most emojis, I would then do a raffle to see which character on the Discord would get to do the action. And if they didn't have the item, they would fail the action. And that was really fun. And people kept failing the actions. And that was very, very fun. I miss doing that. That's what the little sootfoot emoji came from, was like there was a boss battle that we ended up reaching. And we ended up reaching Sootfoot. And that was fun. It was a lot of work, is kind of the thing. And if I had more people on the Discord, I'd be interested in doing it again. But it was a lot of work. and I think I just got too into it. I started doing little art for it and stuff, and it was just cool. I don't know. I'm kind of going off in the weeds. I don't imagine tons of people are going to listen to this, but I wanted to like answer the question since you asked twice so nicely. And yeah, so that's my experience making RPG stuff and games. It's not super tons. I guess I secretly work on choose your own adventure stories all the time. I just have a problem with feature creep when it comes to them. I usually have the story and it ends up spanning way too much. So I'm at the point where like all of the choose your own adventure stories I'm making are like way too big to like ever see the end, but they are fun. I do have fun with them. I made like a visual novel, not a visual, yeah, a visual novel. Sorry, I always get illustrated novel and visual novel mixed up, but I made a visual novel version of Avo for a while ago, and that was fun to do too. It's just fun working with that stuff. I don't know. Yeah. So thank you for listening. I will talk to you in the next one. I have a stream to get to, a secret stream. Shh, don't tell.